Well, hello everybody. The next 25 minutes, we're going to solve the problem of phones and children. It's going to be great. What to do about phones. We have a great panel here, a lot of viewpoints, a lot of things to talk about. Emma, I want to start with you. You are the newest to this game. Yeah, I always say you grew up in the water. Like, phones happened to me. They happened to a lot of people in this room. They've always been there for you. What's your origin story? When did you realize that this was something you wanted to address?
Well, I first got my social media app, Instagram, at the age of 12. And ironically, I was in the 6th grade, but I was actually the last in my friend group to be allowed on social media platforms. So I remember at the time thinking there had to be something so magical about these platforms because my friends' attentions were consistently being pulled away from games of tag and, in communication in real life, and towards their screens. So I remember when I first, pestered my parents, allowed me to get on these platforms, I did feel that expressive, connective, and exploratory magic on these platforms. But after time, I quickly realized that that wasn't really magic. It was more of an illusion. I was engaging with a product predicated on maximizing my attention at the cost of my well-being. And what that looked like was after 5 to 6 hours scrolling every single day, my mental health and my physical health really suffered. So the constant quantification of my worth through likes and comments and followers, it deepened my depression and it really worsened my anxiety. And then specifically as a young female, the constant, bombardment by unrealistic body standards and harmful content, it really degraded my sense of self as a young woman and led me towards disordered eating patterns. But no matter all of that, I still felt like I was pulled back into these apps through addictive features like autoplay, push notifications, where I scrolled for 5 to 6 hours every day. And that really happened up until my 9th grade, where I reached a breaking point and I asked myself, what am I doing on these platforms? How are they controlling me? And how can I build, as a digital native, a healthier relationship with these technologies while maximizing its benefits, while mitigating its harms? And that kind of line of questioning led me to really want to help other members of my generation and digital natives explore that topic. And that led me to eventually engage in digital advocacy and found a movement called the Log Off movement, which works to help build healthier relationships with technology and social media for teens, kids, and young adults.
I want to ask one follow-up here. You described not having it and then having it and then realizing what it was doing to you. I see that a lot, right? A lot of us didn't have any of these technologies and we had them. Famously, my parents did not monitor my internet usage at all, which is crazy. I think about this all the time with my kid. Do you think that switch of saying, oh, I didn't have this, I saw everyone else had it, and outside of that experience, I then came to have it, was important in your realization? Because the thing that I worry about all the time is people don't know that there's another way.
Oh yeah. I think for me, it was really important when I reached that breaking point to understand that it wasn't black and white. I didn't have to not have social media and not have a social life, or have social media and have a social life. I quickly realized that there's so much more nuance in building better relationships. There was so much more nuance and world out there. But for me, the frustration was it felt like I was alone in realizing that. It felt like no other kids had the same experience because I had been really stuck in an online space where I felt alone and I felt isolated and hopeless. But when I emerged out and took a step back and actually talked with people one-on-one, I began to realize that there were so many stories like my own. Mine didn't exist in isolation. And that's when I really realized the power of youth storytelling to propel this narrative forward and to get more kids to want to build healthier relationships.
That's what I would call the positive viewpoint, right? You want to sell a better experience, you want to connect people and make sure people are having good experiences. There's the negative experience. Michael Rich is a pediatrician. You see families, you talk to families. What do you think is happening right now with kids and social networking technology in particular?
I think we're at a tipping point, actually, where kids are starting to realize that it's not the great thing that they thought it was. Kids who've had experiences like Emma's, but also kids who have realized that they miss out on so much. It's so, people talk about the toxicity of what they do online, the content they go online. I'm as or more concerned about what they're not doing because they're online, right? Because a lot of what they're doing online isn't toxic, it's just drivel, right? And it's displacing human relationships. I mean, I've been saying all day, this meeting is so great to be with people that I've been on Zoom with for so long, right? Not just meeting them for the first time and they realize how short I am, but but really to be with each other, it's a whole richer experience, to be physically in the same space, to be able to watch each other's faces and know when we are saying something a little off and correcting. Those are the human things that we are missing out on. And I think that kids are actually learning that in part because of the work that you do, and people like Larissa May of Half the Story are saying, look, we're not going to be, chained down by this anymore.
The flip side of community online is that you can find a lot of like-minded people no matter where you are. I think that's been an important experience for a lot of young people. It's an important experience for Taylor Swift fans.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think, right, the fandom and community are real things. Do you think that there's any balance there, or do you think we need to build an internet that's designed
there are a lot of positives there. And I think particularly marginalized kids, the LGBTQI plus community have really energized and met their tribe and met their people who validate them, who love them, who support them. So there are a lot of positive ways to use it when you use it mindfully with a purpose to, connect. But in general, I think we have, in order to gain this near infinite connectivity we have undermined our connectedness with each other in the deep and sustaining and the meaningful ways that we connect in a situation like this when we're in the same space.
I immediately clocked how tall you are. You're enormous in stature, sir. Viraj.
He's the tall Michael.
I'm going to decline those nicknames. In the interest of being a good teenager, I'll decline nicknames. Viraj, you're on the inside, you're at Snap, you were at Meta before. Right, the criticism here is that parents need more controls, we need to limit what kids can do on these platforms, but the business pressure of all of these ad-supported networks keep you from doing that. How do you think about that as in your role thinking about safety on Snap?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Neely. I would say that responsible platforms have been thinking about these issues for a long time, even though these issues have been evolving over the past 10 to 15 years, and the conversation around them have been changing, especially the past few years. At Snapchat, for example, we use a principle called safety by design, which essentially means taking into consideration safety and well-being implications of any product and feature that we develop at the very outset of that development process. That sort of principle, which is a result of our founders being dissatisfied with what they saw in social media at the time that they conceived of the app, has had some long-standing effects on kind of the architecture of the application, both long-standing and even newer applications. So, for example, on Snapchat, there are no public friend lists. There are no public social comparison metrics like likes. When you open up Snapchat, it doesn't open up to an endless feed of content from other people. It opens up to a front-facing camera, because our goal is to foster communication and creativity among friends and family that you know in real life. So I think there are some real design and policy considerations companies can make from the very get-go that keep these types of safety issues in mind. I generally speaking at Snapchat, we're really focused on enhancing real-life friendships. So a lot of what my team does in terms of advising various policy and product teams internally is helping further that mission. We want to make sure that people are engaging on Snapchat safely, but then also engaging with people that they know in real life to enhance those relationships that they have outside of the app.
I'm going to ask you a hard question because you're the guy from the platform. I apologize. Snap is the one that came, so let's give him some credit. I think about other kinds of media companies.
Yep.
Right? The media company I work at, DreamWorks, they have brands. They have to stand for values. If they get too off of their brand, people yell at them. Their distributors might not carry them anymore. Snap saying we're moderately better for teens, does that help you get users? Do you take users away from platforms that care about it less? Because I think the dynamic that many of us are missing is there's no pressure from the market here, right? And where does that pressure come from for you?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't think my team at least thinks about it from a perspective of let's get users from other platforms. I think we're really focused on making sure that our user base and our community feel safe so that they feel that they can be authentic and can share and be creative. That's what we want to have happen on our platform. So for example, my team, I work on the platform safety team at Snapchat. And so I'm one of many different teams at Snapchat, and at other companies. I worked at other tech companies as well. They're similarly set up in that multiple teams, engineering, product design, my team, policy, all work together to kind of think through some of these features and implications. So my team in particular is focused on, one, advising on these types of policies and products, but we don't necessarily take into consideration how can we take market share necessarily. It's really focused on how can we make sure that our community feels safe and that their well-being is being prioritized. Two, we, on the other end of being a platform, we see trends. We have a lot of data, obviously. So it's important for us to kind of share our learnings about what we're seeing and to make sure that kids, teens, parents, educators, academics are aware of the trends that we're seeing. So there's a role that we have to play in terms of education building and awareness building. And then three, part of my team's role is to make sure that we're in rooms like this, where we're hearing from teens, from parents, from critics, to making sure that we're incorporating that feedback into that process I just described.
Yeah. I want to hold on to that idea of where the pressure comes from, because it branches out into many things I think we're going to talk about here. Tall Michael. I was instructed to call you. You're kind of on the other side of this, right? There's a literacy component, there's an equity component to how we use these tools, what we use them for. I took a typing class when I was in middle school. They don't do that anymore, from what I understand. No one's sitting around being like, here's how to use Snapchat, and then Evan will just change the interface in some confounding way anyway. How do you manage the equity gap here? How do you make sure that we're raising a generation that is illiterate in how the platforms work and how they can use them to achieve their goals instead of having things done to them?
It's a great question. I think equity is complicated. It's not just have and have not. It's actually a whole lot of variation that has lots of factors that inform it. Even to maybe bore people a little bit, but like to zoom out, the pure, people don't want to talk about infrastructure week, but pure access to high-speed internet has been a problem for a long time in this country. It's gotten a lot better. There's billions of dollars of federal money now going to the states to figure out how to improve access. So access matters, but so does support. So how the sort of caring environment, the ecosystem around the child that helps them navigate into all of these new spaces, like Emma, we're talking about needing a support system and guidance that was not there for you. And there are, often the adults in the room are not versed and up to speed enough on how these things work, and therefore are unable to necessarily be there at the right place in the right time, in the right way to help that. And then lastly, just the use in general. What is a productive and positive use? I think these are all opportunities where there's a lot of choice. You can be on all kinds of platforms. You have all kinds of experiences. Some of them are better for you than others. And so if equity is, it's not binary. It is a quality of experience as well, as much as it is having access to all the good stuff. And you don't always know what it's going to be until maybe you go through it, I think, which is really interesting. And I mean, at the CUNY Center, we've done research over the years on the sort of ecological experience of kids. So it happens at home, but it also happens at schools and at libraries. There's a world outside of the sort of the one-on-one device experience that's there. And so how do we know that when that's mobilized for kids, we have the best outcomes. So all of those places need investment to achieve this vision of equity.
Yeah, we won't stay on this too long, but we've covered the broadband gap a lot at The Verge. It is heartbreaking, actually, that there are some children in America who are spending 6 hours scrolling on their phones all day, and there are others who have to drive to a parking lot to get on the Wi-Fi to do their homework. And that gap is accelerating in some ways. And you can read about it in The Verge. And sure, look at Michael's work. But I always think about that gap because the experience is not uniform. And I come back to this idea, where does the pressure come from to make sure we have an equality of outcomes, to make sure we have positive outcomes? Emma, you have a number of initiatives. You are the face of some of this pressure. That is your organization. Your latest one is called Design It For Us. It's about making sure young people are heard in the tech industry. You've got an AI policy platform. As you think about advocacy, right, and going and talking to the platforms, what is the most effective route for you to achieve your results?
That's a phenomenal question. And I think it really goes back to why we started, why I and a lot of other young people have started these initiatives. It's to have storytelling be a vehicle for change. I think oftentimes in the tech regulatory space, in the tech space writ large, young people are included, but as kind of passive participants rather than active agents of change. So what we've really done and what we found to be effective is we want to mobilize young people, specifically in these initiatives, to feel as though they are those active agents of change. Their stories are being heard, their perspectives are being listened to, and they're really pushing the needle and being active agents. I think by activating that agency, you then get into better discussions, you create better solutions, and you have better intergenerational dialogue.
Do you think the solutions are, let me ask this question this way. A lot of times when I talk to tech CEOs or PMs, they say the government wants to design our products for us, and that is unacceptable, that's not capital, whatever they say. They're worried about their stock price. Do you think your approach of saying this is actively hurting us makes them change? Do you think, are you looking for a regulatory solution? Are you looking for an industry-led solution? Do you want to design the products?
Oh, well, you know what? I think it really requires change at all levels. I always say in conversations with young people, we need to work on the micro and macro. So on the micro level with Log Off, we're working on building better relationships with young people, with parents. How do we have intergenerational dialogue that's effective and that works and doesn't feel, out of step? We're working at that level to build better relationships for the individual. But then on the macro level, yeah, we are demanding for change. We're demanding that the status quo shifts from on the platform level, but specifically the governmental level. So we're working really hard to get lawmakers to see that this is an issue that is not going away. And specifically when we're talking about AI, we need to proactively prevent harm. Like preventing harm via design, like you need to incorporate that level of prevention at the get-go. And that's why Design It For Us, the youth-led coalition that I work with, works very, very hard to proactively go about providing policy platforms, policy recommendations, and specifically now policy recommendations for AI, specifically for parents and kids.
What's a specific policy recommendation for AI that's top of your list?
I think what would be really pertinent in the conversation with parents and digital parenthood would be one of our recommendations in our platform that discusses the need to ensure that AI integration in classrooms has strict restrictions, strict regulations, and guidance, because we understand how important it is for kids to have conducive learning environments and to produce great cognitive outcomes, but we need to make sure then that kids are being integrated and taught through literacy programs how to use AI in a really productive manner and how we can mitigate its harms that it can cause in the educational space.
Yeah. Viraj, there's AI in Snap today. You can talk to a bot. It may or may not try to have sex with Kevin Roose from the New York Times. We're in the Times Center. I feel like I have to make that joke. He's got a beat. He figured it out. Great marketing opportunity for him. We're friends. How do you think about that product in a platform that many, many kids use, right? You can get it to say things. It will confidently lie to you, just like every other LLM will confidently lie to you. Where's the boundary?
Yeah, so I think we have to take this issue extremely seriously. In the US alone, there's 20 million teens that use Snapchat, so we know that it's a big responsibility for us. On AI specifically, there's a couple considerations to keep in mind. One, we have really, really clear community guidelines that doesn't apply only to AI, for example, for our broader community. So our AI system and our AI chat can't go against anything against our community guidelines. That's one. Two, we leverage OpenAI systems, so we're able to leverage their safeguards at the very get-go, and then on top of that, we layer on our own set of protections that is unique to our Snapchat community and to our community guidelines. So there's a couple levels of protection, both at the source level from OpenAI and then also kind of at our level at Snapchat. We have the community guidelines, and then beyond that, we're constantly learning. We're in a group, it's important for companies to always be talking to each other, not only to be working with external folks like Emma and Michael and Michael, but to also be talking to each other, to be making sure that we're sharing learnings and what we're seeing. So for example, Snapchat is part of a group called Tech Coalition. It's an organization that has membership from many of the larger tech companies, and the sole focus is on CSAM, child sexual abuse material, and how do we make sure that that's eradicated online, and we're doing everything we can to coordinate with each other. So through Tech Coalition, we're able to share learnings, what we're seeing on our side with AI, what other companies and platforms are seeing on their side, and to kind of help improve all of our systems. We're also able to share signals and information. So if we notice a certain trend or a certain bad actor leveraging or abusing our system, we can share that information with other companies, and they can identify proactively, hey, does this person exist on our platform? Have they done anything that goes against our community guidelines? So I think it's a couple of different fronts. It's one, making sure that we're investing in the right technology. Two, it's making sure that we have the right policies in place. And then three, it's making sure that we're working with external audiences, but then also collaborating with other industry folks to share learnings and data.
I'm going to do this to you again. I'm sorry, man. We haven't really figured out how to keep kids happy with likes and comments. Right? I mean, that's 5 hours a day is chasing likes and comments. Self-image issues with real photos. The next turn is deepfake voices, deepfake images, deepfake video. A bunch of kids across the country are not Scarlett Johansson. They can't just yell at Sam Altman. Do we just stop it? Do we say you cannot use these tools? Like, where is that protection going to land?
I think it's a really interesting question. I don't know if I have the exact answer for that. I would say, one, from our perspective, what we've seen is we've seen kids, adults use our AI tools, but then even broadly speaking, and not speaking on behalf of other companies, just what I've read, for a lot of like cool creative things. I've used it for really interesting things that I didn't think I could do before. Broadly speaking, that's what we're seeing our users do too. They're using our AI tool to create fun images, to create images with them and their friends, to ask questions, to learn about new types of topics. So that's what we're broadly seeing. In terms of the potential harms, I do think that that's a real thing. And to Emma's point, it's something that we have to bake into the system right now. So going back to what I was saying around safety by design, it's that we've applied those types of principles. Every company has to apply those types of principles to whatever sort of engineering or product design that they're doing, to making sure that these types of potential risks that we can foresee right now, we potentially can predict, or that we don't know may exist, so that you have systems and you have a thought process and you have an internal process in place to respond to anything that may come up. I will just say real quickly, for any parents in the room right now, if you have a teenager that's on Snapchat, you can connect to your teen's account through a tool called Family Center. Family Center allows you to see who your teen's friends are, who they're communicating with. It allows you to turn off their ability to speak with our MyA chatbot and to set other content controls. It doesn't allow you to see the content of their conversations. We think it's important to respect teens' privacy, and we kind of view it as if your teen has a sleepover, you know who's over at your house, but you don't necessarily know every single conversation they're having. So we've created those types of tools, and we think it's important for companies to continue to create those types of tools and opportunities for parents to also be involved in this process. Our Family Center is designed for you to see who your teen's friends are, who they're communicating with, and then to see kind of what the safety and privacy settings your teen has set, and then to have those conversations potentially over the app, but also offline. We think it's really, really important to foster those types of conversations and to spark those conversations in real life, because we know that parents need help and need support right now today with dealing with teens who are on their phones.
Yeah. So that's Snap, and you can trust Veeraj. I encourage you to trust Veeraj. Right? The tools are there on that platform. Not every platform is going to behave as well. This is why I keep coming back to what are the pressures? What are the incentives for this behavior? Michael, we've heard about some policy proposals. What do you think are the most workable ones to sort of bring the entire industry into line? Because that's the last pressure. If you don't see market pressure across the board, the last pressure is governmental pressure. What are you seeing?
It's a tough line to draw. I would say there are obvious opportunities. Even the debate over COSA around, stopping the hardest things. The privacy of kids, data privacy is paramount. How do we protect kids by minimizing data collection, protecting it, not using it in ways that manipulate kids based on the proliferation of their likes and comments and other ways that they're tracked behind the surface. There's also the reducing harms that just appear on every platform all the time because bad things happen there. It's an open space where things happen you can't control at all. I honestly don't think it's a policy problem, but it is in a system of behavior, design, and policy. That all those things have to be done together. We work with companies. We have a lot of success in the digital play space, which is a little less messy, let's say, but where people actually come in and say, we want kids to feel community with the other kids, and here's how we make that happen. Or we want kids to feel like they belong in our space. Here's how we represent lots of identities so that they feel like they belong. If there is a version of that on the design side that can actually take precedence over the sort of engagement factor, and I think there is space. The market won't reward everything, but there is room for positive experiences where you want to return to it because you felt good when you stopped. Even game companies tell us that they're happy when people stop playing because they need a break and they're more likely to come back tomorrow. And so I think it's not a fine line always. There's a dialogue among all those different pieces. We can't rely on one only. And that makes it tricky. It doesn't make this conversation easier.
Yeah. I have one thought for you, and I want to ask you about your pledge. One of the biggest challenges as we've covered regulation across the internet is the fact that we live in the United States. The First Amendment exists. Government is not supposed to make a bunch of speech regulations. I don't think anyone would be happy if either President Trump or Biden, well, 50% of the country would always be mad, right? If one of these two guys made a content moderation rule for every platform. Right. Maybe more mad for one than the other, but we'll leave that aside. How do you overcome that problem and say, look, we need some regulatory approaches here that say, okay, deep fakes are illegal, right? But you run right into the First Amendment. Are there strategies that are working beyond just it's for kids, or is there another approach that might be more effective?
That's a question where I feel like the research community that is typically on the sidelines telling you why the sort of leading cultural narrative of the moment is maybe a little off base and not necessarily taking into account all of the science. So that's a plug for our academic friends in the room. But I would also say, like, it's hard. Like the shift from do states' attorney general decide what's bad for kids, or does the FTC decide what's bad for kids? Like I don't think either of those is okay, right? That we have a political environment in which like people make decisions, and so we need some kind of system for that is more broadly representative and maybe not control in the hands of too few, and actually includes young people at the table, and not just the sort of usual young people who boldly raise their hands for stuff, but actually go out there and make sure we're really listening more broadly.
Yeah. I want to end by zooming out. We're supposed to design a better internet. You have a pledge. It's the Inspired Internet Pledge. You're asking people to sign it to help think about these ideas. Explain what it is and what your vision for a better internet actually looks like.
Well, the Inspired Internet Pledge actually grew out of the Digital Wellness Lab, which I founded at Boston Children's Hospital, on the audaciously contrarian idea that we could all play well with each other. I've been working in the area of the effect of screens on kids' physical, mental, and social health since the screen that they all used was television. Okay, I'm a boomer, I confess. But what that has allowed us to do, it just struck me that we were stymied, like the final scene in Reservoir Dogs, by holding a gun to each other's head and not knowing what to do, between those who are for free expression, for creativity, and those who are for kids and their health and well-being. These are not mutually exclusive positions. We're all in this together. We need to solve this together. And so the idea behind the Digital Wellness Lab is what happens if you put a pediatrician next to a software engineer, next to a neuroscientist, next to a screenwriter, next to a psychologist, et cetera, et cetera. We all got around a table, rolled up our sleeves, looked at the data, all of the data, not the data that agreed with us, and worked the problem. This is now and will always be a work in progress. This environment is changing so fast that we really have to follow three moving targets: the development of children from infancy to young adulthood, the evolution of this digital ecosystem, and the way it both affects and reflects that development, because these kids are posting and creating all the time. And finally, the way all of our behavior with each other has changed because of these devices. In one of the earlier panels with the young people, she said, we've got to remember to be bored. We've got to bring back boredom. We can't, we pull out our phones and stare at them every second that we think there's nothing to do. And we miss so much. So The idea behind the pledge is actually to the tech companies and saying, instead of waiting for legislation or litigation to restrict you or direct you, what about if we all step up and say, we're going to tune our products for emotional wellness, we're going to listen to and respond to those who have encountered harm online, and the third is we're going to share data of what works, what doesn't work. We're going to talk with each other. As contrarian and crazy as that sounds from, the days of academics doing research and throwing rocks at the industry and then the industry playing defense, we're actually having a number of companies have signed on, including big ones like TikTok and Pinterest, which was our original signatory. And actually, I have to give a shout out to Bill Reddy, who is the CEO of Pinterest, who had a meeting with all of his advertisers, and we did a fireside chat before it, and he turned to them and he said, if we don't adhere to these principles, I want you to stop advertising with us. Now, that's ballsy, right, for someone in business. He's basically saying, we want to serve our people, and if we're not doing it, I want you to take away our income, which is pretty amazing. So that's the idea behind the Internet Pledge, which is, let's all take a deep breath. Let's realize that we will never be perfect, but we will always keep perfecting it. And we're on the same side. We have to live and raise children in this environment together. And finally, we can't, frankly, wait for legislation or litigation to fix it, because those things take time, and kids are growing up during all that time, and they can't wait. And as the Hopi elders taught us, we are the ones we've been waiting for.
Yeah. Well, I can't think of a better place to end it. Thank you so much. If you could tell my 6-year-old to be bored more often, that would be great.
It worked for Einstein.
Very good. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you.